Jackie, welcome to the show. I'm so excited you are here.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your office. A lot of people on the camera don't see it, but it's such a beautiful office and it feels very zen in here.
How would you describe it? What do you like about the office?
I love your built-in bookshelves. That was the first thing when I came here the first time. I was like, oh my God, I love these built-ins. And your display of books. We have so many crossover books that we've both read. And I love your piece of art that says love. It's just, yeah, that's one of the most important things to remember. Love.
It is so important. It's definitely the most complimented thing in my office. I have it behind my background when I coach people, and people always say that they love it. And then I say, pun intended.
Yes. You're like, I subliminally put that into your mind.
Yes, it's all part of the secret plan.
Yeah.
So I want to cover so many things today, but one of the places that I'd love to start with you, because we have this shared history, and I think you were in this space a little longer than I was, but tell us about your time in private equity. And specifically, I want to talk about the sabbatical you took away from it.
Yeah. So I started my career in public accounting. I'm first generation. My parents are from the former Czechoslovakia. So I was raised very much like go to school, get a good paying job, stability, all those things. So I was just naturally good at accounting and just like picked that major. And I remember at one point I called my mom and I was like, I want to be a cosmetologist. And I was like doing stuff with like the plays in school and she was like, no. So I just chose the safe path and worked my little tushy off for like 7 years, was kind of rapidly advanced on that career path. And then in my final year in public accounting, I started working with private equity firms. And as I made my way out of public accounting into the private sector, I knew I wanted to work in a really nice, like mid-sized small firm where I could get like my hands into everything. And so I ended up landing in the perfect spot. It was such a dream job and I really enjoyed it. Like I enjoyed it. We were growing rapidly. Like we were a small team. I got to like do everything from working with investors to emptying the dishwasher. Nothing was above me. And around the same time, I'd always loved the idea of traveling, but I wasn't actually doing it. And around the same time, one of my best friends from high school, she was a teacher, so she would have off in the summers, and we started doing trips. And so the first trip we did was Spain and Morocco in August, and the following year we went to Asia and we went to Vietnam and Laos. And I just had like the most amazing trip. We were leaving Laos to go back to Vietnam, and I just started crying, and I was just so touched by this older woman that worked at the hotel. She was kind of taking care of all the children guests and just we had no interactions with her, and she like walked us to the car and I could just like feel her heart and her love for us. And I just saw how little people had in terms of resources and how generous they were. And it was just so opposite to the life that I was living in New York where I was just surrounded by like more, and I don't want to say greed, but money was obviously the MO, and it has to be. That's what we're doing for our clients in the private equity world. But it just felt so opposite, and it touched something within me because I was so in my head at the time. I was just living fully in my head and scarcity and how do I get safety through my work and all this. And all of a sudden I had this experience that I couldn't explain viscerally, crying for 2 hours on the flight back to Vietnam. And I made myself this promise that I would quit my job and go traveling like by the following year, because I knew I didn't want to just do 2 or 3 week vacations every year for the rest of my life until I retire. I was like, that's just not the vibe. I don't want to do that. And I just want to backtrack like for a second, because when we were on like in the airport at JFK and we were leaving, my friend had turned to me and she said, this trip is going to change our lives. I still get like emotional saying that because it really did. For her, we met someone while we were traveling who introduced her to the concept of international schools, and she was an art teacher. So she knew she didn't want to like go somewhere else and teach English. And since then, she has been teaching internationally. She lives in Hong Kong. She just got married and had a kid this last year. And that's like, what, 8? I don't know. I don't even count anymore. Or maybe 10 years later. And has not lived in the US since. So we definitely both, the trip changed our lives. So yeah, I was true to my word. A year later, I ended up quitting. It was planned. I let my employer know like 2 months in advance. And the first part of the trip, I decided to go to the Czech Republic. And I Thought I was going to learn to read and write the language that was a part of my household growing up. Quickly learned that I know way more Slovak than I know Czech, and they are different languages. And it's one of the hardest languages to learn. I mean, if you know anything about foreign languages, this is like times 100. Like every single word changes depending on how you use it and where you use it. And it's something that was very intuitive to me. But once I started studying it, I was like, oh my God. And I was like, I don't really want to go to school, but I'm on like a student visa. And I ended up finding a startup that's managed by an Aussie and an American. And it was in the entertainment space. So I kind of slowly started working there more and stopped going to school. Really, I just like a fun time in Prague. And then from there, we did some day trips and weekend trips and stuff like that around Europe. And then I went off to Asia to meet said friend who was living in Malaysia and teaching there at the time. And we went through Indonesia, and I spent some time in Malaysia and Thailand and Cambodia and Nepal. And then I flew to Jordan and spent time there, went to Israel, went to Palestine, went to Turkey, to Greece, and worked my way back into Europe. And that was like the whole thing was a full 10 months. Yeah.
Wow. So you really went for it. You realized that you wanted to go on this trip. It was going to be life-changing. And throughout the trip, you saw these countries, but then you realized that you wanted to do this more than just 2 weeks, 3 weeks a year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm so glad that I did. I remember I was on this hike in Malaysia to see this flower that is so rare. And it was like a 5-hour hike. And this retired couple was on the hike with us, and they were like often, behind us, not really being able to keep up. And I remember when I first told my mom that this is what I was going to do, she was like, no, you don't do that now. You do that when you retire. And that phrase is like in my head as we were on this hike. And I was like, that would be me in like 30 years. And instead I'm doing it now.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Because that's something that happens so often is people put off all of the trips, all of the experiences, all of those bucket list things that they want. They put it off until retirement, and they don't realize that you don't want to go backpack around the world when you're 65. You can't go on the 10-day ski trip. And so you got to see it
You
in
probably
real
don't want to
time.
stay in a hostel either.
Yeah, definitely not. So that's really cool and powerful that you were able to have that lived, felt experience that gave you proof that what your mom was saying, what everyone says in society,
Yeah.
just wait, put it off till retirement, that it was not going to work for you.
Yeah, and I was really grateful, like, the exact timing of when I did it because I had money in the bank. I didn't have to stay at the $2 a night hostels. Like, you meet people that are literally just, like, passing time in Thailand because they can eat for, like, $3 a day, and they're, like, sitting in these outdoor cafes watching The Simpsons. It's like, okay, that's not exactly the flavor of travel I want either. So, yeah, when you stay at the, like, $10 a night hostel, it's actually nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So you go on this trip, this year-long sabbatical from private equity.
Yeah.
When you came back, did you quit right away? What did it look like after that?
So when I came back, I thought I was on top of the world, right? Like I just like went around the world. I'm like, yeah, this is so great. Everything's gonna be amazing.
I'm so
And
cultured.
yeah, and it's like boom, left and right, just being like sucker punched. So I was in a relationship the whole time. I thought we were like moving forward. We break up within like 6 weeks. I'm start looking for a job, and I'm living at my parents' house and in my childhood bedroom because who's gonna give me a lease if I don't have a job? And yeah, it just felt like such a struggle. And I was in my bedroom and I was just like, universe, like, help me. Like, I can't keep feeling like this. I think when you're like traveling around the world and you're in that momentum, you don't have to face some of the things that are like internally happening within you, like some of the questioning, the self doubt, the why am I here? Why is this not working? Why do I treat myself like this sometimes? And I'm such a harsh critic of myself, right? You don't have that momentum and that every day that you get to be like awed by what's happening around you. And I think within the same day, I told a friend that I was just like feeling like absolute shit. So she's like, why don't you go see my therapist? And I had done the therapist thing before and it just like was not the thing. And I was like, fine, I'll go. And I felt really seen and understood by this therapist. And in the last 10 minutes of us in that session, she said to me, do you want to do this thing called tapping? And I literally said back to her, I don't care what you call it, just help me feel better. And I have to admit it looked really silly and felt really silly. And we tapped on something that had been like a lifelong story, belief as to like why things weren't that easy for me. And a couple days later, I got another job rejection and I went to reach for that story in my mind. And there was just like a delay. There was like a disconnect. Like it wasn't there. And I was like reaching for it and there was nothing to find. And it wasn't like my childhood went away or like, whatever your history is doesn't just like dissolve. But in that moment, I could not make it about me and what's wrong with me. I was just like, okay, like that job wasn't for me. Something else will be. And EFT tapping, EFT stands for emotional freedom technique. And I feel like in that moment is what I saw the power of it being like, okay, I am emotionally free in this moment because I didn't rely on that story and make myself wrong and internalize it, like all the things. So I was like, I'm free to think about this differently. I'm free to experience this moment differently. And that's when I went back the following week to therapy. I was like, what was that? Give me more. Let's do that every time. And that therapist was doing little workshops here and there. So this was the fall. I started doing the little workshops. And in this at the same period of time, it was my birthday. My old boss reached out to me for my birthday and was like, how are things? And I'm like, well, actually, they're not that great. Like I'm living at home, can't find a job. And he's like, well, just come in and we'll give you a project and put a little money in your pocket for a couple of weeks. And he's like, come meet me at the Rangers game. We'll work it out. I get to MSG. We don't even get up the escalators. And he's like, the person we hired to replace you, the next day after him and I had that exchange, that person quit.
Whoa.
And he's like, do you want your old job back? And I didn't. I was like, no, I'm like, I just went on this trip. I'm going to radically change my life. I don't want my old job back. And so I was like, no, but I'll fill the spot for you. Like I'll help you out for a couple of months, right? Until you find somebody. But at the same time, I started doing all this tapping work and I started doing all this work on myself. So I ended up back in the same office. Yeah, I had a different boss, whatever, but like I had a different experience of the same job because I was showing up differently. And it's so interesting how many things change. Like my enjoyment of the day-to-day changed. The way that I was like getting up and going and work out before work and coming in and like just the breath of fresh air that I felt like I had, even though like none of my circumstances really were changed around me. And you can see that people felt it too, because then it came down to like, hold on, I actually want this job. So like, let's negotiate me coming back on like full time. And the negotiations went really well. Like I was cut into a lot of equity and carry and was some of the stuff that like had to vest, like they acted as if I never left. And like, so it's just, I credit a lot of the way that I was feeling about myself and carrying myself as to how people then felt that and responded to me.
Mm.
Yeah.
So what is tapping? You said that the first time you did it, it felt strange.
Yeah.
What actually is it?
Some people describe it as like a emotional cousin to acupuncture, which I love. So it's focuses on either you can do it on all three or individually one of these, which is your emotions, like how you're feeling, including like how that feels somatically in the body, a belief system. And then like even if it's not a feeling in the body, but you're just like, oh, I have this pain or something like that in your body, you can tap on that too. And you instead of acupuncture, which uses needles that go through the skin, you use your fingertips instead and you gently tap on certain points that are connected to different organ systems. And within traditional Chinese medicine, organ systems are associated with different emotions. And so what you're doing is some people say it's like you're moving energy around, but it's so much more than that because this has been so widely studied and in double-blind study, like really comprehensive studies. So we know that it's lowering cortisol. We know it's lowering blood pressure. We know that it's rewiring neural pathways. So literally that thought that you're ingrained in thinking all the time that's just so automatic, like you can break that thought and literally create new neural pathways to think differently. So we know that people resolve pain, especially so much pain out there that's chronic, that's longer than 1 year, is emotionally based. So we know that people are breaking through stuff like that. And then a whole host of other things happen as downstream effects, whether that's like losing weight or feeling autoimmune diseases, like recovering from those, all dis-ease or disease is rooted in dis-ease, right? And so tapping is one of those things that like helps the mind, body find peace. Really, how I understand it to work is if we have something that is upsetting us, that is creating a fight, flight, freeze, fawn response, your amygdala is firing, right? That's the part of your brain where like the blood is going to flow to, because it's like, okay, we get the warning. We need to use this part of our brain. And I think the tapping to me sends a signal to the brain that says, we're actually calm and safe right now. And the amygdala is like, oh, okay, now I get to break this bond between this belief or this feeling and unsafety. And I think then like the rest of the brain can turn back on, including like your prefrontal cortex, which is problem solver, critical thinker, empathy. All of a sudden we have empathy for ourselves. We can see like things in a different light. We can solve the problem. We're not as centered in the problem. We can like kind of zoom out and see it from like a more neutral place. So I think a variety of things are happening. Everybody experiences it differently. I do it every single day as like emotional hygiene maintenance. Yeah.
I love that. So it sounds like you are able to signal to your body through tapping that we are safe. You can tell your nervous system we don't need to be in fight, flight, fawn, freeze, whatever, all of them,
Yeah.
while still exploring the thought and working through it so that the next time that thought comes up, your body doesn't emotionally respond as much.
Yes. Yes.
And what does it look like? And before I ask you to model it, I feel like
Mhm.
there's a little hesitancy in talking about it because maybe it's a little out there, a little woo woo. The people who listen to this podcast are all about this kind of stuff. So don't worry.
Oh, I'm not hesitant at all. I think like, I'm so excited about the future. I think holistic medicine, holistic practices, healing modalities are moving center stage because, the gig is up. We all don't want to be medicated. So, this is such a beautiful practice because there's no side effects. Like you almost like can't get it wrong. Which is not to say don't go work with a practitioner. It is a powerful tool when it's put in the hands of somebody who's really skilled. You can kind of go through things that literally like will change your life. But in the moment, you can calm yourself. Even if you're driving, you can just tap a few points. I used to use it at work underneath the boardroom table. I would be tapping and stuff. So, um, the way you can do it is like the formula is a setup statement. So even though it's even though whatever, like
And you're
and you're
tapping
siding on
together.
the tap of your side of your hand. So
Okay.
it doesn't matter which hand. You can go back and forth. You can do them together. If you're driving, you can do it against the steering wheel. Please be careful. You can do it against your thigh. So like you're just trying to hit this point here. And so you say the statement, even though, and you name whatever it is. Like, even though I'm so freaking upset that guy cut me off right now. And then the textbook is I deeply and completely love and accept myself. That's a lot. That's a lot for a lot of people, right? Maybe they're like many steps from getting to a place where they truly love themselves. So you can say anything neutral. Like, I'm open to releasing this right now. That's just the way it is for this moment. I'm open to forgiving myself. I'm open to forgiving them. I'm open to seeing this differently. Um, I love I choose to treat myself with kindness and compassion. That one's a big one. I see like that shift a lot for people. They end up like being really compassionate towards other people too with that. So you do the setup statement 3 times. You can do the exact same one. You can change up the words a little bit. And then you go into the points. I always stop at the top, start at the top of the head, which is the crown of the head. You're just tapping gently. This don't leave a bruise, right? It's just like as if you're going through a concert and you're like, excuse me, I just need to get by you. When we were actually touching people back in the day. So, and then you go to your eyebrow point, and then you come to the side of the eye. So it's not quite the hairline or the temple, but like it's really on that bone that if you looked at like a skull, and then under the eye, under the nose, above the lips, in the chin spot, and then down. I don't have a shirt to show you my body, but your collarbone here, when you get to the end of the collarbone, maybe about an inch over, and then like just go under the bone. So you have the bone and you're kind of like here in this circle. So you can do it one-handed. You can like this. You can just do one side. Kids do their whole hand. Like I said, super forgiving. And then you have a point here under your arm. If you're a female and you're wearing a bra, it's probably right at the bottom of the bra strap. And then I use this point over here. A lot of people don't use it, but it's kind of under the nipple on the rib cage. If you have larger breasts, you have to move your breasts up. But it is a liver point. Liver is anger. And I feel like anger is just something that we naturally are built to be able to access quicker or more easily. And then usually when we can clear that, there's like layers of more deeper feelings, shame, sadness, things like that that we access after that. So I really do think that point's important. Sometimes I also use the thymus, which helps with like red blood cells. And then, yeah, it just depends. I have fun with it, and then you come back through. And what you're doing in all those little points is you're just naming little aspects of the problem, the challenge, the way you're feeling, you're upset. Like you can say the same thing over and over. You can be like, that jerk off, but that car, why do you have to stress me out today? Like, I'm just trying to be out on the road and, get there safely. And just my whole body feels really excited right now, whatever it is. You will feel like it will start to naturally come down. And you can measure it. You can measure it based on like what we call a SUD scale, which is a 1 to 10. You can take a measurement before and be like, oh, I'm a 7, I'm activated. And then check in with yourself after. You can do it a lot of times. I work with tapping and somatic experiencing together, which is when we connect with points in our body that are calling for our attention, let's say. And I might ask somebody what the visual is of that. Like, say they feel like a pressure in their stomach, and I'm like, what's the visual? And maybe they give me an object. They're like, there's a rock there. And I might check back in and be like, how's the rock? And it's changing shape, it's changing color, changing texture. And then maybe that's not an actual object. Maybe it's just like, it's really cloudy.
Mm-hmm.
And then we check back and it's like, oh, it's starting to clear, or the color's changing. So that type of stuff tells me like things are moving along. What you really ideally want to do is get down to a 0. Yeah.
Got it. And is this something that you can look up online and practice with yourself? Or is it something that you really recommend going to someone who's trained in it to start?
I think if you're practicing for yourself, I think that there's no side effects. You're not going to get it wrong. Be gentle with yourself. I wouldn't go and like choose your most complex trauma, your deepest wound to start with. Like do it on something a little more innocuous, like the driving example. I do it on something you don't like doing. Like I hate washing dishes. Like I've done it on that. Like, like I just want to avoid all this stuff, procrastination, like things like that, right? Start with something like that. If you do have something that's deeper, I would definitely go to a trained professional, really looking at like where are they being trained, because there's a lot of like get your cert in a weekend type of things out there right now. And when I've talked to practitioners that have those types of certifications, the different approaches that are in their toolbox related to this tool, they don't have. And that scares me a little bit, because I actually think trauma heals better when we don't talk about it. And, to just jump into the center of it. There's a lot of techniques that we have that you can sneak up on it. You can gently go into it. You can tap about the idea of working on it. Like there's a lot of ways to go into it really gently so we don't create any sort of abreaction for people. Yeah.
So start slow, do it with someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's always a good idea. So I want to
I'll just plug, I've been trained through EFTI, which is EFT International. Their program is very rigorous, took over 6 months for me to get certified. You work with 50 people. You have to work under a mentor. You have to do case studies. They watch your tapping sessions with people. They have a listing service. So if you're looking for somebody, go there. They're based in the UK, but there's people from all over the world, and you can find somebody through there. I really recommend them.
Amazing. We can put that in the show notes. And
Yeah.
I think any sort of training program where you're being observed live and you have a mentor, all of that, that's what I did for my coaching program. And it's so different than the like get certified as a life coach in 3 minutes, 3 days, 3 weeks. So I want to bring it back to how you brought tapping back into your life. Like it worked so well on you that you started helping other people with it. Tell us about that and the business that you built around that.
Yeah. So went to a couple of those workshops with my therapist, and she was in the process of getting certified. Obviously, she's already a professional, so like she's got a little more leeway of like not being certified and being able to work with it. And I started working with her mentor to become certified. And I went to a conference upstate in New York. I was living in New York City, and I just had like a full-blown meltdown. There were like 4 people tapping on me. Typically, like you tap on yourself. That's why we work a lot through Zoom screens. And it was like a full-blown meltdown, and everything happens for a reason. And I met a gentleman there, and he's like, I have this healing program. And I bought the program. It was a couple $1,000 program by the end of the conference. It was the first time I'd ever spent money like that, which I think was really great because fast forward, like that became very like much ethically for me, like how I sold my work. I understood like, okay, we don't price per hour. We don't work like a therapist. Like we really want to work with people that are committed to a process, and that process takes time and many months to get there. So I worked with him. I did a lot of my own internal healing, which I really needed because I was working with those 50 case studies. I was going to a private equity job all day, moonlighting at night, and I was a Vedic meditator, and my meditation teacher blasted his list and was like, "Who wants to do free tapping?" And so like I just had a wait list of people that wanted to work with me. And I remember being like, "Oh my God, like I don't want somebody to bring me this issue or that issue." Like I could feel like the fear. And I didn't know what it was about, but clearly I just needed to do a lot of my own work because these people were coming to me and triggering stuff that like I myself like hadn't taken the time to look at and dig through. So went into the healing program. My God, was that like an experience like no other. Like when I talk about like if there's never been a better time to be a wellness practitioner, is because like we are like moving away from the status quo because talk therapy is really not it's underserving people. It's not really giving them the results that they want. It's not helping them. A lot of times it's a diagnosis, brings you to baseline, and there's no like let's bring you to like your best potential. And the tools that are available that insurance like covers versus what's not covered. So I mean, this guy had me screaming into pillows. I'm in a New York City apartment, right? Like he wants me to scream out loud. I'm like, my neighbors will think I'm being murdered here, right? The walls are thin. So I'm screaming into pillows, I'm crying, all the things, attachment, working through that stuff. So at the end of it, I felt brilliant. And I was like, okay, wait, let's check the facts. Like I've got an amazing apartment in the West Village. I love my job. I'm well paid. I don't want to work with anyone. I was like, I don't hear anyone's problems every night. Like, I want to just go live my life, right? So I went into about 2-3 years of just being like, yes, living my best New York City life. And I was still traveling. That was another thing I negotiated when I came back. And I ended up on this trip in Nicaragua, and I ran out of books. Like every book was in Spanish. I didn't speak Spanish at the time. And so I had one book with me, and it was sort of like it's called Light is the New Black by Rebecca Campbell. And it's like an exercise book. So it's not really something you like go just sit down and read cover to cover. And I got nothing else to do. I'm in the jungles of Nicaragua by myself. So I'm like, okay, I'll start doing the exercises. And the little faint whisper from my heart that had kept being like, you're meant to do more than this. You're meant to do, help people. You're meant to come back to that tool. You're meant to come back like you're different now. Like you can use the tool differently. And so when I came home from that trip, that's when I was like, okay, yeah, let's see what happens. Like let's see where this goes. I didn't really have a clear vision. I just started at the first point, which for me was enough years had gone by. It's time to go back to that mentor. It's time to go like get educated again. So I went back to another like 3-day training of hers and started working with clients again and finished. That was around January, and finished certification by summer, and had already told my employer that I was going to be leaving. And we worked out that for 6 months, the 6 months at the end of the year, that I would work part-time and I would work on projects so that I had like be able to manage my own schedule. And when I wanted to come in, so I would do 2 weeks off and 2 weeks on each month. And they kept me on insurance. So it was just a very like gentle exit. And that's how I started the business. And so I was just tapping practitioner. I joined a co-working space, started leading tapping circles there, started getting inquiries where people wanted to work with me, was selling like really small packages, was saying yes to everything and anything. I said yes to an opportunity to go out to the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which is like an hour and a half on the subway, to work with a lot of men who were formerly incarcerated. These are not like ideal clients that are going to go then and like pay me and work with me. But like I sat in this garage next to like a pallet of salt that they used to like put on the roads to work with these gentlemen. And I mean, my heart broke for the things that were going on in their lives. And I think I got paid $50 for that, but it was just like so much passion and drive was like just pushing me forward at the time. And then I finally was like, all right, you need some coaching. Started getting into some coaching programs. They were hit or miss. They were helping a little, right? I was getting the business up to like maybe $5,000 a month, and which is not much living in New York City. And I was doing trips to Bali and back and forth and things like that because I was taking advantage of like the lifestyle too. And then COVID hit, and I was in Bali. State Department said come home. I saw the apartment in New York. I couldn't get like the airline on the phone to try to reroute, and I called my best friend from college. She was still up in California, and she said come here. And so I went to her place, and we were like, we'll ride out some of this together. So we did 9 weeks together. That was like my first winter in California. And during that time, I hired somebody that I had been like watching for a while. I was like, I know I want to work with this woman. And I hired her, and the business just took off. She was so clear. One of the best questions she asked me was, what do you want to do? It was so simple.
What do you want to do in terms of business, life?
Like who do you want to work with? How long do you want to work with them? Like, what do you want to do with them? And it's so funny because like we don't think we have that choice. Like we think like, oh, I'm just gonna sell rate per hour like a therapist, or I'm gonna sell this like 4-week package because that's what people buy. And at that time, I think I was selling maybe like 3-month packages. And she literally was just like, who do you want to work with? How long do you want to work with them? What do you want to charge for that? And I was like, $8,000. And she was like, okay, done. And I just started selling. And people were coming in left and right. It was like the business went to like $125,000 in 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was there any resistance, fear, things holding you back as you started selling, or were you confident and you just were like, this is what I'm offering?
Yeah, it was her strategies and the simplicity of everything. And at that point, I think because I had started working with clients, and even when I was selling some of those smaller packages, people were renewing. And so I was like, I already know people want to work with me for like this length of time. So then I just felt more confident in it. And like, I remember like what's really interesting is that the first people I say this a lot to people that are newer in like this type of business, the first people that come in are going to be people who know you. They are going to be friends. They are going to be like that person you met at the conference, or like I did a speech like a year before and somebody came in and was like, hey, and a lot of it was driven by the changes that all of us globally were experiencing. So people had time on their hand. They were like, okay, I want to work on these things. Probably similar to how I came home. I'm just putting that together. Like when I came home from my trip where it's like, oh, now I got to face the stuff. Like I'm not just in that motion all the time. So people wanted to do the work on themselves. And then her approaches that she taught me, the business side of things, they were working really well. And I decided, okay, I wonder if I could help my friends who are all like in similar positions, whether they're like photographers or they're trainers or whatever like their thing is, their service-based business is. So I did a 1-day VIP day for anyone who wanted to come. And I think I charged like over $1,000 for that too. It was like $1,300 or something. And everyone was making thousands of dollars the next week, like by implementing some of the stuff. And I was just like, wait, I'm like really good at this. Like I'm really good at copy. I'm really good at messaging. I have this like special gift where like if you tell me about your ideal client, I could just like get inside of their head. And I don't know if maybe this comes from all the tapping I've done with people, because you start to see all the subconscious and the psychological stuff behind like belief systems. So it's like, I feel like I got this front row seat to how like people are wired and how they think, and then translated that into copy. And my coach, as gracious as she was like, just do this too. Like become a mindset and business coach. And so then I created a program from there. That program went on to like gross, I think like near $200,000. Like, yeah, all from tapping.
It's so cool. I have so many questions, and we can always put this after the podcast, but I want to tell you about my ideal client and see what comes up for you,
Yeah,
because you say that this is your superpower. Are you willing to play with this a little bit?
sure.
So my ideal client is someone who is a high achiever, they're highly competent, and they're very successful. They've checked the box on making the amount of money that they thought would bring them happiness, and it hasn't. They've gotten the fancy job title. They've done all the things that society told us is supposed to make us happy and fulfilled and content.
Mm-hmm.
And things aren't that bad,
Mm-hmm.
but they have this feeling, it's their soul whispering to them that you are capable of more.
Yeah.
And it's the positive, the pull towards the you're capable of more, and also the negative of like them looking at their life and saying, is this it? Is
Yeah,
this really
totally.
what I'm
You're doing
supposed
a
to
good
do with
job
my
of
life?
it already.
So how do I
Yeah.
how do I talk to them more effectively?
So one of the things I love to teach is behaviors. So could you put yourself as like a fly on the wall and then follow them around all day? So for this type of person who like I've worked with this person, I feel like a lot of my clients have worked with this person, and you could put your own tweak on it, whether it's you primarily work more with men or women or whatever it is. So sometimes people work with moms or what age group. By the way, when people say you have to niche, they're not talking demographics. Like this is it. Like it comes down to behavior that you can talk about. So probably for that person, they're a little more sluggish getting out of bed. Like it takes a lot for them to get out of bed. They're snoozing the alarm. They never used to do this. They used to jump out of bed with like vigor and excitement. They couldn't wait to get to the office. Now, like they've glanced at the clock on their laptop 6 times already and it's only 9:10. They find themselves like, oh wait, let me go like waste time in the kitchen. They know their work isn't like as good as it used to be. They're hoping no one's going to notice, but they're feeling a little nervous. It just doesn't feel like they're getting fueled from within anymore. Like that natural flow is there anymore. There's this resistance. They find themselves kind of losing focus and they're dreaming about this what if scenario. Like, what if I could do this instead? They find themselves like in their spare time, like researching or reading certain books on the thing that is like calling to them the more. Just exactly what you said. Like, is this it? Like, I have checked all the boxes. Like, they told me to do all these things. And yet, here I am. I got here and like it doesn't feel the way that they promised me that it would. So, like, what's like kind of they'll question, like, what's wrong with me, too? So, that internal dialogue. So, the fly on the wall, but then also, like, how do you become like an observer inside of their head? So, their thoughts that they're thinking, the questioning. And then I love like disrupting thought. So, it's like, this isn't your fault. Like, society conditioned you to think this way, right? But there's a whole nother universe that exists for you. And like, here's how you tap into that. And then you position yourself as the expert that can guide them there. So everything we just talked about was a little bit more problem based, which is important. And I think it's really good for cold audience, simple copy because people are like, okay, I get that. Like I can observe that within myself and I see myself in that. He knows what I'm experiencing. That's really how we get that credibility is your ability to communicate that you understand someone. But if you want to work with sort of higher value clients, I call them, they're the clients that like show up, pay, no resistance. They do their work, they do their homework, they implement. They don't need like to be dragged. They're not in victim mode. They're not going to resonate as much with the negative parts, like the challenges. They want you to paint the vision. They want you to be excited about the movement, what's possible for them, and enrolling them in that. So lots of storytelling, your story, client stories, showing them what's possible. And when I say storytelling, I mean like really being specific. So for instance, for me, like I can sit there and be like, it's a dream to work less hours in your business. Like, okay, yeah, someone's like, great. But for my ideal client, which is a wellness practitioner, I'm like, shut your laptop by 3 o'clock and go frolic off to the organic grocery store and like dream about making like a 10-course dinner or, spend your morning doing your 10-step like skin, skin and wellness routine and meditate and this, that, and have the ability to like read a book without any guilt. Like that is more applicable to my type of client. Like I've taken like the simple like work less, but I've actually given you like a tangible story that you can picture in your mind, right? You can picture somebody frolicking in the grocery store. I can too. That's what makes it storytelling is like, can you retell it to somebody else? Can you picture it in your mind?
So it's a level of specificity that goes beyond the work less, have more time, and
Mm-hmm.
you make it specific and
Yeah.
call in things that they want more of, they want to do.
Yeah. Move out of like the cliche of like those taglines and move into like what those taglines look like and feel like.
And that was a question I wanted to ask you because as I was doing a little bit of my homework, you talked about a lot of people struggle. I struggle with sharing my client success stories.
Mm-hmm.
Every single person who's worked with me, their life has gotten so much better. And then when people ask me on a podcast or just in passing or on a discovery call, they're like, tell me some success stories. I feel like I can't articulate it that well.
What's the block? Like, what do you think is what makes it feel hard for you?
I think, well, on the surface, there's the like confidentiality. Like I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
share too much, but
Yep.
that's bullshit because I can just change their name, change like the
Totally.
specific
Client
thing.
K. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's it's like hard for me to boil down working with someone for 6 months and changing so many things into like a short story, and maybe it's
Yeah.
just practice.
I
It's I don't
love
think about it.
I love that you brought this up because I see this over and over again where look, like you weren't trained to do marketing. Most like practitioners I work with were not trained to do marketing, right? Yet it's the thing that's going to make your business thrive. And so when we feel like we haven't been trained to do something, there's less clarity. And there's less clarity. There's usually like a questioning of like, am I doing this right? Or this doesn't feel good. Or you're less likely to want to get your reps in. Because a lot of times you just need to develop this skill by literally just like doing it over and over. And so what I see is that people try to shove like 1,000 points into one post or one email. And so my answer would be like, simplify it. Like literally, you probably have 10 different angles on client K, and don't be afraid to just make it super simple and have it just be about, okay, here's what happened with their health and their body, and here's what happened with their work, and here's what happened in their relationship, and here's what happened with their children, and here's what happened with their money. And like, go like, simplify it
Yeah.
and make like 10 pieces of copy.
Yeah, I love that.
Because
Mm,
people, like, our attention spans are so, like, there's just so minute these days. And I feel like when we have like too much thrown at us, just like to put it in like words, a lot of my clients, and I'm in nutrition school too at the moment, just because I absolutely love it and want to build another business in that realm. Um, but it's like, think about if you have like a huge meal and how you just feel like, ugh, right? And so it's like we need to break it down into like bite-sized pieces that if someone's like, "Oh my god, that Osmonds booster is so good," right? Like, or just like you can digest it. Like the enzymes are there, like you can actually receive it and have it like have a place that like nourishes and lands in your body. And then it's like living in someone's body. But for our sake and purposes for like marketing, it's living in someone's head.
yeah.
There's thinking about you. They're thinking about that client that did the thing that they wanted to do, that has the thing that they dream about.
And it sounds like not oversharing. That's something I'm trying to do with both the sales side of it and then also sharing stories. Like, don't over explain.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think you need to. Like if if someone's coming to the sales call and you're like over explaining, your marketing probably hasn't done the job that it needs to do, because the marketing should be doing the heavier lifting. The sales call should just be like, oh, is this like a vibe check? Like, are we on the same page? Are the expectations realistic? Which again, like the marketing, as long as you're telling stories that are truthful and within the realms of possibility for your clients, then like you should be on the same page as like having the same expectations. Yeah.
So good. I love it. Thanks for letting us go there for a moment.
Totally. I love it. You can see I light up.
Tell us about the leveraged and loaded business model.
Leveraged and loaded. So there's like two pieces to it. So there's leverage and loaded daily growth framework. So again, like a lot of people I work with, like they weren't taught how to grow a business, how to market a business. So there's 5 components that I have people do every day. It's like the consistency, it's non-negotiable. And they include, very first thing is working on your mindset. So your self-identity, your leadership. This is the difference between when I was tapping with a friend for $83 a session and charging $8,000 to work with me for 6 months. I'm the same person, right? But it's belief systems, it's how you see yourself, it's the value of your work, it's the price tag you're willing to like put on that to value your time, it's your leadership, it's your boundaries, it's having hard conversations, like all the things. It all comes down to how you see yourself. I call it like your subconscious self-identity. So that is an absolute must. That's the starting point. I believe in tapping so much that I love the other modalities that are out there. Breath work, meditation. I get tons of downloads for my own copy and meditation, but none of them, I think, change the neural pathways and change the subconscious as quickly as tapping does. So that's where I have people start. Because also, if you start your day like that or you start your processes like that, it's just going to make everything you do from there be even better, right? Because you're going to write it from that place of confidence. You're going to write it from that like belief system of like, yeah, let's go. Like you're going to get out of your fucking way instead of making like things take 10 steps and overcomplicating the things. You're just like, boop, that's good enough. Let's go. Let's get it out there, right? And done is better than perfect. And then we do stuff with organic and inorganic, meaning paid, that comes down a little bit later, but like outreach. So we need to constantly be like growing the people that are seeing us. I'm speaking about this primarily through Instagram, but it's applicable to LinkedIn or other things too. Obviously, I love to like network. We met each other through networking locally. So organic or paid, eventually outreach, and then cold copy. So we're always have to be thinking about how are we bringing new people into our world. New people do not have the enzymes to be able to digest like all these things. We need to just hit them really simply and quickly, usually reels because they have better reach. And then more warm generated content, which can be like master classes, talk to camera, reels, stories, podcast interviews. So obviously like this isn't going to look the same every day, but these are the things that you need to check every day. And then the last piece is a leveraged component. You need to work on something that is going to transform your business into something that is leverage. And when I mean leverage, it means you are not touching every dollar in your business. If you don't want to go to work that day, you still make money. If you don't, if you're not feeling up to it, if your energy's not feeling that great, if you're feeling sick, you're still making money, and just making the business easier to run. I wholeheartedly believe that when I see businesses take off, it has so much to do with energy, but it is not sustainable. Those people eventually, energy expands, it contracts. We need different frameworks that hold the business. So team, automations, systems, ads going, like things like that you're just like, okay, I actually have a entity that is separate from me. I am not the business, and the business works for me. I don't work for it. So there's a process to getting there. And so I teach a lot of those types of things too. Like, how do you hire? How do you decide who does what? What kind of automations can you bring into things? How can you repurpose things? Ads, like how can you reach more people? Yeah.
And when you talk about doing the organic versus inorganic, what would you say the ratio is to the ratio of creating content and like putting stuff out there in the world to bring people in versus do you have people do like one-on-one kind of direct outreach?
Yeah. I don't want to say too much because this is like things that are, I'll say like
Tell us
behind,
all your secrets,
yeah,
please.
behind the paywall. But I have a process for, I know where to find health and wellness practitioners,
Mm-hmm.
right? Dr. Hyman, anyone else, like, that's just an easy one that I can pull off the top of my head, right? So a lot of people that are my ideal clients are going to be hanging out in his world. So I can go find people and easily like, 10 people a day and go engage with them. So that's the organic, right? Like I'm actually doing that versus like the paid would be creating content, and there's different types of content that you can create. Like I can create content with the intention of having an ask of like, come follow me. Like if this resonates, just come follow my page. So that's like an invitation in that you can have running in the background for like $3 a day. Then a step above that would be like, okay, problem identification, right? Like if do you find yourself like going through feast or famine and like one day you're on Zoom all day long and can't grow your business, then all of a sudden like you don't have clients again, right? So that might be something that people resonate, and I might be like, oh, it's because you're not using the 5-step growth framework that I just explained. Okay, go opt into that. That's a different type of ask, a different type of ad on Facebook. Here's a different price point. You need different things set up like Zapiers and forms and things like that. But you can run all that in the background. And so to me, there's a lot of people not talking about using ads because it's too complex or whatever. But I'm like, it's just harder to grow organically these days. So I wouldn't want to slow down your growth. Like I'm not in the camp of like, oh, you need to be in a business for 3 years to start running ads. If you have a couple of dollars a day, to work at home, don't go to the coffee shop and spend $8 on your matcha. Like you can have your ads doing that instead. But if you have time, right, like maybe you're just starting your business and you don't have as many clients, or you're just like really fired up and want to like get things moving and you're willing to put in the sweat equity, great, go do the outreach organically. Yeah.
You're sharing so much good stuff. I won't ask you any more specific questions, so we keep enough of it behind the paywall, but
Boundaries.
beautiful boundaries are so important. If people are listening to this and feeling like I am, like, yes, this is amazing, I want to learn more, how can people learn more about getting in touch with you, potentially working with you?
Yeah. Go to my Instagram, Jackie Simek. So JACKIESIM as in mom, EK. And yeah, just come send me a DM there. Check it out. see what you like, come ask me questions. Let's get started.
And you work best, your ideal client, the people you love to serve
Mhm.
are holistic wellness practitioners.
Yes. So I've just recently changed to like naming that when I realized that I've been working with those people for years and years since the beginning of my business. And I think because I'm in school and so passionate about living a holistic based life, I can't tell you the last time I took a medicine or went to a doctor or anything like that. And um, I can go off and on and on. Like I'm gonna reel myself in to not go there. Um, to change the world in the way that I want to change it, the mission that I'm on, where I believe that the body has an innate ability to heal and that when we do, we are sovereign and free and able to like live our most thriving life. I can't do that on my own. Even when I start business number 2, which I want to focus on the fertility space and getting people holistic wellness there so they can maintain their fertility into later years, I can't do all that on my own. So right now, given the gifts that I have and the business acumen that I have, that's who I want to work with. It's like, okay, how do I enable the ripple to be even bigger?
You've hit on such an important point throughout this conversation is that you might be an unbelievable coach, the best therapist, the best nutritionist, but you're really good at your skill and your craft, but you don't know how to market. You don't know how to sell. And I'm speaking about myself. Like I was trained for over a year to become a damn good coach.
Mhm.
And I excel in the sessions with people, but the whole marketing side and the sales side and the content side has been a steep learning curve for me. And so
Yeah.
people do need that piece that's not taught in the certification program.
Yeah. I'm going to talk directly to camera because it absolutely breaks my heart when you struggle to get clients or the types of clients that you want to work with, or you feel like you're just like, oh, I don't really want to work with this client, but I got to say yes because I need to pay my bills. And then you make it about your skills and that your skills are not good enough. And so the solution in your mind then is go get another certification, go get another modality. And really, what you need is to bridge the gap on your business acumen. And maybe you don't like it and you have resistance and you're like, I hate social media and I hate Instagram and all these things. But let me tell you, it's never been a better time to be a wellness practitioner. Or any coach or anybody that's into transformation. It's like, it's like as if you started a gym in like early 2000, right? Like back in the 80s, it was just Gold's Gym and everybody would walk around Venice and be like, these dudes are nuts. Everyone has a gym membership these days.
Yeah.
I have like multiple ones, right? So I think like we're only going into that direction and people are craving transformation as a society gets like harder to live in and all the toxins and like all this other stuff. Like they're looking for more solutions. The people are waking up every single day. So like the time is ripe. Are you ready? Like, are you actually ready to have a business that can hold the amount of clients that you want to serve that's going to have the impact that you want to have? And that is the gap that needs to be bridged. I had a dear friend of mine, she did my program, the one I mentioned earlier. And then she came back to work with me last year. She's been in business 10 years. She's a somatic behavioral therapist, does not take insurance, charges thousands of dollars. And she had I think she hired me in January. December, she had $800 December, right? Not that great. That doesn't pay the bills where she lives. And we started working together and we worked together till August. She had the best year financially in business that she's had in 10 years. And she's always been such a champion of what she does and meh, that's her own words, meh about the business stuff. And she's not in love with the business stuff, but she knows how to do it now, and it's working. Yeah.
That was like a real live you bringing in the story, one
Mhm.
of the clients. So that's so good. I'm fired up. People can go to your Instagram to learn more about you. I think the last question I want to ask you is what are you most excited about in life right now?
Mm, I'm gonna cry. Um, just, like, the amount of healing work. I thought I had done healing work before, but, like, I've been working 12 steps. I got to step 7, and then I got cocky, and I left program, and then I went back. I do it around relationships, and had a great relationship that ended this past year, and it was right that it ended, and I've come back to, like, working program, and I just finished step 3, and if you know anything about 12 steps, step 3 is about your connection with God, and I just feel closer to God than ever, my version, my understanding of what God is, and just feeling like so many miracles. Like, if an outsider was looking at my life, they'd be like, nothing's changed. My mom has Alzheimer's. I just went through like, move after we broke up because I didn't want to float $5,000 rent every month by myself, right? So I've been like, and in that move period, I had 3 different people offer me free housing. Like, just everything to me I see more clarity around is like a miracle now. And like the Course in Miracles, I've never done it, but I know that they define miracle as a change in perspective. And so, yeah, I'm just like so excited to be more present in my life, to be more hopeful, excited about what's happening. It is a battle, I'm not gonna lie. I'm 43. I still want to get married. I still want to have kids. I have no idea how that's gonna happen. Um, the kids part, but I know there's a million ways. My friend's 46 and just did a transfer and they're pregnant, like for the first child, right? There's so much possibility. And I have to fight sometimes like the old conditioning, the old ways of thinking. But yeah, that's what I'm most excited about. Just like what can unfold and that I have so much choice.
Mm.
Yeah.
What can unfold, what will unfold. I
Mhm.
appreciate you so much sharing that honest, vulnerable answer. And you have such a passion. You have so much energy. I can feel it around wanting to help people, wanting to help them grow their business so that ultimately they can heal and help heal more people. I think that is so needed in today's day and age. And I totally agree with you. I think we're at this spiritual awakening phase where people are realizing, hey, I don't want to spend my whole life doing this shitty office job. I don't want to commute 2 hours a day to go here. I wanna help people. I wanna do what I feel like I'm here to do, and it seems like you are the perfect person to help them do that.
I hope so. Yeah. I know it can be scary, but the best person to bet on is yourself.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for being here, Jackie. I
Oh
appreciate your
my God. That's it? We're done? No, I want to keep going. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for everyone tuning in with us today. We love you guys. If you liked this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the Dare to Dream podcast on YouTube. You want to make sure you don't miss out on any of the amazing episodes we're going to be coming out with in the future. And if you liked this video specifically, please give it a like, leave a comment, let us know what you loved. Thank you so much for being here. We love you guys.